Call the meeting to order. Going to roll call. Vernon.
Here.
Sherry.
Here.
Ben.
Here.
Aye.
Here.
Hayden.
Here.
All five's here. Call to the public. Public comment will be allowed by the mayor's discretion during work sessions. This is exclusive of items requiring a public hearing. The mayor reserves the right to limit the total amount of time for public comment and or impose a time for limit for each speaker at each work session. In order to facilitate an input at the mayor's discretion, each eligible agenda item will be provided an opportunity for public comment after the staff and applicant presentations. Following work session agenda items.
Room at this table, very large.
Item number one, standard traffic ordinance, STO number 859. Chief, you're on.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Chief Kevin Sept. This is a fairly standard process, and in your package, you'll see that the adoption of these ordinances is something we do yearly. I will tell you that this year, we tried to refine the process a little bit, bring our stakeholders together, prosecutor, judge, city attorney, chief, do a little collaborative effort and make sure that the ordinances we were adopting fit the needs of the city. In front of you, you'll see that the action is asking that you adopt ordinance number 859 for standard traffic and 860 for the UPOC or Uniform Public Offense Code.
That it?
Yes, sir. Any questions? I'd be glad to clear it up. Clear anything up if you have questions or try.
Does anybody have any questions for the chief?
I do.
Yes, sir.
Chief, on page 5, it talks about things that are being omitted and
Yes, sir.
deleted. One was barbed wire. Other one was Article 4, sex offenses and domestic violence. Is there any rationale behind those three?
So I can speak to the domestic violence. Those would go through county court.
Okay.
So there's no charges locally or municipally that we would pursue.
Okay.
The barbed wire, I think that's actually covered in municipal code, and please don't quote me on that. I have to check.
Okay.
But I believe that's the specific reason for the exclusion of barbed wire.
Okay. And then Article 4, sex offenses, again, that's covered under a different process, different,
So that goes to the county.
that's county again. Okay, okay,
All of those charges that
Okay.
occur in base or we actually prosecute.
okay.
And that was one of when we sat down and sharpened our pencils, that was one of the things that we looked at very specifically was there's been some assumptions made in the past and credit to council. Instead of making those assumptions, we honed it down to a very specific list and could provide the reasoning behind why those were excluded.
But the list just struck me as something a little different.
That'd
If
be-
I may, many of the reasons behind that, one is just having a probation officer, having someone to monitor this, but also it's a victims issue as well. So anytime you're dealing with domestic violence or sex crimes, there's victims involved in many communities, many cities that have that in that code. The only reason they do this is they have someone on staff to handle it. So most small communities do not handle that through municipal court. Because you need to make sure the victims' rights are protected, and the county has the mechanism to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So the assumption is that list would be excluded each year because it's pretty consistent. Okay.
We'll do this every season.
Got it.
It's amazing that stalking is in here. I know I just recently presented some information to the police department about anti-stalking measures. So if you get a chance, go down there and pick up one. I don't know if you have any cards left.
Have you been by the police department to see that?
I
It's
did,
displayed.
and I was surprised, but yes. So if you
I
have,
hope in a positive way.
I was surprised in a positive way.
Excellent.
So for those that don't know, I did a national presentation on anti-stalking back in 2012. and donated that information to the police department, and they do have it posted for people in the community.
Excellent resource.
Yeah.
Anything else? Sir?
No.
Sherry?
Illegal bingo operation. Strikes me as interesting, but no questions. Thank you.
Ty?
Consider this on a consent agenda?
Yes. this
Yeah.
is- Yeah.
Agreed.
Definitely.
So do we need to talk about number 2 then, since we kind of had,
Just handle the vote
okay,
that's acceptable to you.
absolutely. Yeah, both of them, yeah. Moving on to item number 3, update on enhanced code enforcement. Presentation, Chief Self, again.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, Chief Kevin Self. I don't know that this is much of a presentation. It really is a 30,000-foot view of something that should be at the forefront of our thought, and that's codes. They're there for a reason, and sort of some contextual history behind that. In January, we determined that was really a place we hadn't spent much time. And we needed to look at not only the municipal code book as a whole, but really as enforcement. So got together again with our stakeholders. Kudos to Gene and his crew. One of the driving forces was certainly the city administrator, Leslie. But we kind of looked at what we did or what we didn't do, and quite frankly, we didn't do much. So we spent the first part of the year looking at how we could improve the process. And then in April, and you'll find sort of a brief overview of this in the biweekly chief report that was put out on 8/10/22. There's a little blurb that'll catch most of what I'm going to tell you. But in April, we pushed out some very specific things as it relates to codes. There's now a dedicated city email address that people can report those codes violations, Baser Code at cityofbaser.org. That can be found on our city website. We created a door hanger and we created a form letter so that we can report those codes violations. We also created a mechanism where once you've reported a codes violation, our codes officer, Ashley Webb, will circle back with you and tell you, hey, this is sort of the resolution, not the specifics or who's involved, but this is kind of how we handle that. We've taken a much more active role in codes enforcement. We've involved our police clerk or our city court clerk, Tracy Dockery, in that process. Quite frankly, she's a wealth of information. To date, from April until today, we've had 43 reported codes violations, 7 self-initiated. It's a work in progress. I will tell you that the front end loading is done, so we are working diligently, but there's a tremendous amount of work needed to be done in our municipal code, not only in the ordinances, but in how we address and how we handle those. There's been some things that I think were just foregone conclusions. It's just the way we've always done it. So we're working diligently to change those. So there's a mechanism, and that is the 30,000-foot view. Questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Well, I saw in the quarterly that you had provided information to the community about, the email address and some things. So that's good information. But I think it's important. So I think it's good that somebody's starting to look at it and become a little more active in some of the code enforcement issues in town.
We shared that information both on Baser Police social media as well as the City of Baser social media. So I think we're getting it out in the venues that we have the ability to push it out. And it's one of those areas where people get a little bit touchy about, don't worry about my grass, worry about your grass. But we're trying. Questions, comments?
I do not. Thank you.
Nope.
Thank you.
I think we're good.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Happy to do it.
Okay. Item number 4, Tomahawk Park. Authorize the staff to execute change order number 1 to the agreement with Sands Construction for site work.
Thank you, Mayor. Maddie Waldeck, Assistant City Administrator. In your packet, you have information regarding a change order for the site work contract for Tomahawk Park. The creek channel within the project boundaries is controlled by a FEMA. It's within the FEMA mapped zone, Zone A, which is subject to permit and additional requirements. We did know that going into the project. However, going through the permit application process, it was determined that we need an additional box culvert at the crossing, as well as a larger riprap. And so we've had multiple engineers review the information. We've also consulted with Pete Heaven, our special counsel, regarding the change order request. Jean Miracle, our municipal services director, has reviewed it. And what's included in your packet is the final submission for the change order. We did budget $850,000 for Tomahawk Park, which included the site work and the playground. That was about $20,000 over what the contracts were assigned previously. So this would be a total change order of $41,000, but a net total change in the budget of about $20,000. We have reviewed the capital improvement fund and reviewed its performance to include this change. It would not negatively impact the performance of that fund. If the city council chose to not approve this change order, the city would then cancel the contract and rebid the work. If this change order is approved, we would go ahead and proceed with ordering these box culverts and the additional riprap. We've talked with Doug Pickard of Indigo Designs and also Sands Construction to get an estimate on what the timeline would be. The original timeline completion was the end of November. They're telling me that with this delay, it should be the end of December. So about a 30-day delay. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Hayden, you got anything?
Yeah, the updated timeline was one, so thank you. And then I'm assuming this is something we're gonna have to do either way, it sounds like. So do we think this is a reasonable rate for that adjustment?
We do. The original change order request that we received, we did not feel like it was appropriate. And we engaged Jean, our special counsel, Pete Heaven, to get his construction experience and expertise involved. And so we went back several times with Sands Construction to get it to an appropriate place.
Good. Good.
Good, thank you.
Sherry, heard anything? Nothing. Okay,
Thank
Thank
you, Mayor.
appreciate it.
Think that could probably be consent agenda as well.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Item number 5, award contract masquerading civic campus.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I will take this and I will try to be quick about it. The city, as you know, has started our design efforts on the civic campus, the phase 1 improvements, and our original agreement with Confluence and GBA anticipated us issuing an early mass grading package, really to get dirt moving on the site and really to construct the initial improvement, which is the stormwater for not only our facilities and future facilities, but also for the 2 school facilities that have already been constructed. Our project team did place the mass grading package out for public bid. We did have our bid opening, oh my goodness, 2 Fridays ago now, and we're very pleased to share with you. And I think in your packet, you have the all of the bids that we received, but we actually received a couple of bids a few bids actually that were underneath the engineer's estimate. One of them, to the tune of almost $300,000. So very favorable bid that we received. We've actually been in the process of our due diligence to make sure references came back positive, not a significant number of change orders. Everyone that we've had contact with has said very positive things about their work with Superior Excavating. So from that perspective, it looks like we're going to be in a position to prepare contracts for your consideration. The other thing that I would note, we did have an update communication with both GBA and Confluence today. As you will see on our packet summary, the State Historic Preservation Office did express an interest in our site. And we were required to complete an archaeological phase 2 site assessment. I have no experience with that. This is the first site I've ever had. SHPO is what they're called, take an interest in. And we were very fortunate. There are not very many companies that are actually eligible to complete those assessments. And the firm that was scheduled to complete the assessment originally had a lead time of 4 weeks to come on site and prepare their report. I think just through leveraging some different professional relationships, they actually were on site Monday. They completed their report today and have had conversations with KDHE, and it doesn't look like there was nothing discovered on the site that would be of interest to the State Historic Preservation Office. So that's a very positive thing for us. We're hoping that permits should be forthcoming. Any contract that we would prepare, of course, would be subject and contingent upon having our notice of intent and appropriate stormwater permits from the state. And one of those requirements was to satisfy this issue with the phase 2 archaeological assessment. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but for your city council meeting, assuming that you are favorable to us advancing this item, we would have contract documents for your consideration and hopefully an award of that contract to the low bid.
Vernon, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Ben?
Is there something that triggered that? Like, that sounds so strange to me, like.
I don't know. I mean,
Okay, if you don't, I'm-
there's something,
Truth is,
obviously there was something that they saw in the initial permit application that interested them, and I'm not sure what that specific item was, and I'm not sure that GBA really knows what it was either. So,
Sure.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
I have a couple questions. I look in Gene's direction. So when we get these bids in, who all is looking at the scope difference between the bids? Confluence, Gene? Because when I see 1/3.
Yeah.
Of the highest, and it's, I don't know, 60% of the estimate.
mhm.
And I've seen before where their scope's kind of limited, and I see they're $110 on site rock excavation.
Mhm.
Is it because they know they're gonna make up $200,000 because they know there's that much rock out there? Is there? I just don't know the process of how deep that was kind of dug into.
Yeah, so for our contracts that we have in place with GBA and Confluence, they review the bids that we receive for conformance with the specifications that were included in the bid package. So if they and of course, we take a look at them as well, but from an engineering perspective, if they see anything in the responses that would either be inconsistent, incompatible, or perhaps overlooked, we would either reject that bid or we would have gone back to the contractor and said, hey, you didn't include this as part of your scope. Was that an oversight or was that intentional? Had there been any necessary modifications that would have been included in supplemental data, but we did not find anything inconsistent in their bid.
That thing's just so like Mammoth Sports is at $19 and Superior's at 110 for,
Mhm.
the things are just so far around. It seems strange looking.
Yeah, we're actually seeing that more and more on all of these bid packages, including, road work, which didn't used to have significant variations. I mean, it's a strange market.
That's my only question, not really a question.
Well, I had a similar question on the 110. Do we have any? I don't know what that unit is of site rock excavation. Do we have any ballpark of how much rock is there? An estimate of what component of the job that's going to be?
I am certain that is included in the overall bid documents. I don't have that off the top of my head. Do you?
It is, it's minimal. When we were reviewing these bids with Confluence and GBA, the site rock excavation is minimal, which is why they didn't kind of raise a red flag about that particular price point.
Any more questions from anyone? Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate it. Can I need an executive session?
No, I don't think we'll do an executive session because we don't have a mechanism to take and record minutes going into that and coming out of it tonight. So
Okay. Okay. Did you want to talk anything about us losing Freddie?
we certainly can. So I just probably gauge the temperature and I suppose the interest of the city council governing body. As you know, Freddie De Leon, who works for the school district, had been contracting with the city to basically provide our online presence, YouTube, Zoom. He's no longer with us. Tonight's our first meeting without him. Obviously at work sessions, Kathy has some additional time because she is not required to take minutes. But as you know, we've been offering this as a courtesy. It's not a legal obligation. You're not statutorily required to continue to stream your meetings. So I think we're looking for some direction. Is this something that you want us to continue to offer? And if so, it is going to be my recommendation. We need to find somebody to help do that. We really don't have the people here to probably manage that while they're also taking minutes.
So. Would you guys want to speak on it now? You want to think about it? Or how's everybody feel about that? We can either do away with it. I mean, everybody can still Zoom in, like if you're gone, Ben or Vernon or whoever, and to join the meetings, but it just won't be shown in the public.
It's been pretty light usage for a while now. I personally kind of think, and to me, if we go for a little while with it and we get an uproar out of the community that they're missing it, then we can look at implementing something. That's my just quick opinion. It's we can always re-implement. There's a concern.
On the average, we only have 2 to 3 people at the most on. That's
Live versus views, though. People go back and watch it after.
We usually have on YouTube between 40, 50 views, somewhere in there. I will say that we do go back through and listen as staff. We try to take notes on the feedback from the governing body. So a lot of those views are from us, listening to the direction and just making sure that we have all of our bases covered. So I don't think that that's 40 to 50 people. I think it's probably in the teens, if I were to estimate.
I like the transparency. I like having that option available, but I don't know what the level of interest is. What's the expected level of cost to coordinate something like that? Any way to estimate that even?
Maybe go back through and look to see what our contract was with Freddie. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we can certainly follow up with that. I would assume that it'd probably be a comparable amount.
Be interested in knowing the number of
Yeah.
this.
I don't know. I mean, for context, I think we could, if you're interested, we could also reach out and see what agencies are still running meetings on Zoom. I don't know how many are doing that. Again, I mean, we want to make sure that we're meeting your expectations and want to make sure that we're complying with all of the open meetings laws. And I mean, we want to be transparent and we want to do all of those things. We just also recognize you don't have the benefit of the consultant who used to basically run those items for us. And the person who's running it tonight, next month needs to take minutes. So, or at the end of this month needs to take minutes. And
Didn't-
typically either Maddie or I are speaking. So that pretty much whittles you down on not a lot of people left to do that.
Did I heard from somebody that the school board is not showing them anymore either. Is that right?
It's my understanding that they've discontinued that, I think, a few months ago. Their meetings are not online anymore.
So you're attending in person?
I mean, like you said, checking with other communities or best practices that
Yeah, absolutely.
either other communities or county may have, if there's some easier way to just set it up, let it run, or even record, and so people could watch afterwards, even if they can't comment. It would be,
Absolutely. Yeah, if it's something that you're interested in us exploring, we're happy to do that. We can bring it back to a future work session and it can be a topic for a work session, even if you'd like.
Does everybody feel about that?
For the immediate need, we won't have it accessible next session, so. I'm good with what she's saying, is they'll go do the research over the next 4 or 6 weeks or however long it takes, but in the interim, we'll be without. That'll actually give us a month or so to hear some feedback and rescore.
Oh, transparency is really, really high on my list. And I think that, sometimes I'll listen to, it's a town called China in Maine. I'll go down, listen to their city council meetings, or sometimes I'll get on and I'll listen to Lawrence's city council meetings. I think that that we should continue to have our meetings posted out there. I don't know if that means we need to do a separate contract to get someone to do that with us, but we do contracts for other purposes. I just think that it is a nice touch, accountability, history, all that stuff is captured when these types of meetings are posted, online or Facebook or wherever, wherever people go to see them.
yeah, I was gonna mention that too, not to drag this out, but just that if there's, as you're looking at costs, that it doesn't necessarily have to be live option. I think whether
Right.
it's Zoom or just recorded for YouTube or Facebook Live, just
Yeah.
some way to have that, at least audio, I think in my opinion is more important too.
But people may be intimidated in coming into City Hall to talk. At least it gives them an opportunity to see just how vibrant this group is in terms of discussing things and topics of importance. From a historical perspective, I think that it just gives us an easy way to go back and say, okay, what was said, what was done, with both the ethos that's associated with what we're saying. So I'm for one that will say we need to keep putting them out there.
Perfect.
Can we send out some bids or talk to some different companies and see what they would charge us per month and then bring all that information back?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's probably, our next step. We wanted to make sure that we brought it up, that we don't have the service. We know we thanked Freddie last month, but as we've been kind of working through the logistics of what does it look like to run it on the back end? I mean, it sounds easy, but making sure you've got somebody who can figure out if somebody needs to talk and take the notes. And we just want to make sure that we don't miss something, that we're doing it correctly. We've had issues with if you change screens or did the screen change with it? And sometimes it doesn't. And so we need to make sure that if you're going to make it available, it needs to be available. And so let us kind of figure out what some of those options might look like and what the price point is. And if we have a staff option to do it, we'll certainly bring that back as well. But want to make sure that we're, again, meeting your expectations and doing it correctly.
I appreciate you doing the work. Is there any way we could reach out to Ms. Potts or somebody over at the high school? I mean, I feel like my 16-year-old could do that. So,
Yeah,
thought
absolutely.
process of maybe a high school student coming in to get some community service hours or something like that.
We would let.
Sky's the limit. It's
Yeah,
free,
agreed.
right?
Look at that.
I think this would be something that would be a nice little project for the high school.
Very good idea.
So
Great suggestion. We will explore it. We will leave no rock unturned.
Okay, anything else for tonight then?
I do not, Mayor. Thank you.
I need a motion just to adjourn.
I think you can close this meeting.
Mr. Mayor.
There's a second.
Second.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye. What are you going to do with all this extra time?
30 isn't quite 11.
That's a good start.